as you can hear, we're now recording. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to another episode of the Everyday Black Men podcast for authentic Black male thoughts. My name is Riker, and I'm joined by R. Reed Armstead, Sham, the Libertarian formerly known as Black. Please follow us on Twitter, EVYD Black Men, Instagram, Everyday Black Men, and Everyday Black Men Facebook page. We also have a Patreon, that's EBMP. And on our Patreon, you can find exclusive episodes. We have $3 and $5 tiers. And last but not least, our website is www.everydayblackmen.com. But today we have a special guest, Dr. Herbert. He's going to be here with us, so you may hear us refer to him as Dr. Harris. He is coming to discuss the 12 laws of success and some other things that we're going to talk about today. So Dr. Herbert, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's Dr. Herbert Harris coming to you from North Carolina. I am a retired attorney and author of the 12 Universal Laws of Success and other books, and just honored to be here. It's great to know what everyday Black men are talking about.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But
thank you so much for taking time out of your day for us. We really appreciate that here at Everyday Black Men.
Dr. Herbert, I wanted to know more about your law degree and kind of some of the things that you saw. I know in the legal field, sometimes Black men don't have as nice a relationship with law as they'd like to, but what did you see during the time that you practiced?
Well, money is always the key. Justice in America is about how much money do you have to finance your own vindication. Let's put it like that. So what is definitely true, and I'm sure it's true for most poor people, but if you don't have the money to hire a competent lawyer, and justice may not come to you in proper fashion. From a Black perspective, very often many of our folks don't have the money and have to rely on legal aid and other paid for representation. And the challenge with that is the legal aid folks are paid by the same folks that pay the district attorneys pretty much. That's coming out of public funds. So I won't say that they're not independent, but I'm just saying that many of the legal aid lawyers are overworked, and it's just when you look at the caseload, it's like I just can't give a client that type of attention that their case may warrant. And then the court system embraces all the prejudices that exist in America. So a young white kid would come before a judge and a white judge, and there's a good possibility, judge look at him and you'll see a certain similarity, and a judge may take an attitude of let's give him another chance. And a Black kid will come before the same judge, and based on that whole paradigm of America, the judge may say, hey, let's teach this kid a lesson. So all of those things are together in the judicial system. One of the key things is money. Have the money to represent hire competent counsel. That is probably the most important thing of all.
Excellent. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, New York.
New York. Wow. Yeah, I'm sure you saw a lot up there. The New York law can be one of our most tricky just because you got so many people living in one state. A lot of different. Oh yeah. A lot going on in the economy.
So he also mentioned that you wrote books. He said, what made you want to go into that field?
Well, I've always been a writer. A writer and a teacher. I wrote a book. I've written a number of books. My first book was actually written quite some time ago. It's a book called How to Make Money in Music, because I was in the music industry for a good number of years. And I've written a couple other books in between, but my most popular book is a book called The 12 Universal Laws of Success. That one has been through over 300 printings in about 9 languages, and it's been a transformative book. Many of the young people and older people who are interested in creating a new life for themselves and want to avoid the pitfalls, 12 Universal Laws of Success is the book for you. People who've been through life and maybe even at that retirement age and who are wondering what to do with the rest of their lives, 12 universal laws of success is for them also. So the premise of the book is that living is a skill. Success is a skill. You have to learn, practice, and master that skill to give yourself the best opportunity to create the life you want.
That was an interesting wrinkle. You didn't. I didn't have any idea that you did music. A lot of us were former artists or current artists with music, and that's interesting. What in music did you participate in? Like, what aspect of it? Was it the legal side, or were you an actual musician?
Oh, I actually played. I play now. I play guitar and I play piano. I played the Apollo, and I worked in the old days. My office was in the same building with the Isley Brothers, Buddha Records, Little Richard, 1650 Broadway, New York. That was the spot for music. And in the era when people would run into a record company and play a song on the piano, and the producer would say, "Hey, man, let's go in the studio and work." I have a couple of records that were decent hits. Um, a group called The Finishing Touch and The Top Shelf. We also had a group we co-produced out of The Groove, and the whole Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff and that whole group. This is the era like the 70s of music, before hip hop. I was, matter of fact, I knew the Furious Five, one of the early rap groups, and the actual DJ Hollywood. He started out on Wednesday nights jamming at the Apollo Theater. So I've been around in music from the old days right on up to the present.
That's cool. I was watching a documentary recently with not a documentary. It was just a couple interviews with Lionel Richie. What's the other guy's name? I can't think of his name. That Tutti Frutti guy. Yeah,
Richard?
Little Richard.
Little
Yeah,
Richard.
they were
Hello,
talking about.
Richard, Tutti Frutti, or Rudy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were talking about like light skinned people in hip and like music back then and like the different things that it was a weird documentary offshoot, but that's interesting. Before hip hop, wow. So you mentioned your recent book. What are some of the takeaways you would like people to know?
One of the key things, the first chapter of the book, we deal with the topic of how to study. Most people never really learn how to study, how to really approach a book or an article or anything you want to learn. And so we actually give a systematic approach. We call it SQ3R study method. Survey the material. You may be reading an article, or a book, even taking a class. A survey is S. Q is set up certain questions. So if you survey an article, you know that you're reading an article about, let's just say, cars. And so ask what questions you think that article is going to answer about cars. And then R1 is to read it, R2 is to review it, and R3 is to recite it. The point of that technique is to develop competence. In this age, people can Google stuff. So you ask a person a question, they'll Google it, give you the answer, and go on about their way. But they may or may not retain it in their minds. They'll just Google it again when they want to know again. So that's one of the key points of how to study. And then we deal with the laws of success, how to use the laws to work for you. For example, the first law of success is the law of thought. It's what a scriptural basis says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So we teach people that you need to have positive thoughts. Whatever you think and you feel about that thought, that has a vibration to manifest in your life. So if you think bad things, if you think lack and limitation, you think, oh, how bad it is, and you say it with such feeling that, yeah, man, it's really bad. I'm busted, disgusted, and can't be trusted. Then that becomes your reality. But then if you change your thinking and say, hey, man, I'm prosperous, I'm good looking, I have a lot of energy, I have great potential, and I'm going to do good things in the world, that gives you a whole nother vibration. So the law of thought, and we go through the main three laws: the law of thought, how you think; the law of change, that you can change your life by changing your thinking. If you think a new thought, you can create a new reality. And then the third law is the law of vision, that if you can see it, you can be it. And, you know, one of the things about the early music industry, so many of those guys just wanted to sing. You go back to the days of Frankie Lyman, the Ronettes, I mean, these are groups I'm sure before your time, but these were folks that sold millions of records, and their thought set was they just wanted to sing. They just wanted to sing, and they never made the money that the rappers make today because the rappers came through with a new mindset. When the music industry did not embrace them, they said, "Well, let's create our own." I know if you remember back in the really back in the late '90s, early '80s, had street music. The record companies wouldn't buy the records, and the radio stations wouldn't play them. So you had a whole bunch of DJs developing around the country, and they could literally break a record right in the different clubs, and that gave the music industry a whole nother cut on the music. And so when the rappers came through, from the early guys like Flash and the Furious Five and the actual real DJ Hollywood, when those guys came through, they had a different paradigm working with the record companies. The older artists thought that the record company was everything. If you don't have a record, you're never going to make any money. The newer artists, the rappers, say, "Hey, we got the goods." And so it's just a different mindset. And then that law of vision, if you can see it, you can be it. So many times we see ourselves based on our present condition. We see ourselves, we may be broke. And so you don't have to see yourself broke. If you're broke, that's your condition, but that's not your potential. So you can see yourself rich, you can see yourself prosperous. And once you see the vision, you can set goals to take you there. Once you set goals, you can make a plan to execute those goals. And if you follow through and don't quit, you can be a Tyler Perry. You can be a Beyonce. You can be anybody who wants to create success in their lives. Back to you.
No problem. Hey, I do have a question. You said something about the idea of positive thinking. Let me ask you a question. So that's like a common trope amongst like anyone who says, positive thinking can change your world. But let's say you're a kid growing up in the inner cities of Houston, and you have to go to a terrible school every day. And like, when does that positive thinking end? Where you're just like, man, this life sucks. I feel like they tell you often now that you can change your life whenever you want, just positive thinking. And you're just like, dude, I'm hungry. I can't positively think anything while I'm hungry. So how would you recommend a kid in that situation, change their life? Or, well, I guess we're talking about adults right now, right?
Well,
So let's say you are a 9-to-5er and you are working, what do they call it? Paycheck to paycheck.
you got more month at the end of the money.
Repeat that.
Correct.
That's a good way to put it.
Where you
Yeah, that's
have
a good
more
way to put it.
months at the end of the money.
Mm.
But you
got more what at the end of the month?
You got more month at the end of the money. So you got 25 days worth of life, 25 days worth of money, and 30 days worth of life.
Okay. Hold on, you gonna have to expound on that one. I know
No,
what you're
he said it
saying.
perfectly. He said it perfectly. He's saying you
gotta
have
make
this
it.
amount of resources and you got this amount of time, and your resources do not match the time you have.
Okay.
Yeah. You run out of money. I mean, as many of us have, you may be making like $1,000 a week. That's like $4,000 a month. But if your expenses are $5,000 a month, at the end of the month, you run out of money. You run out of money in the third week of the month, and so from that point on, you have to finance your life on credit cards, borrow money, and do some outside side hustling.
So
But
effectively,
yeah,
do you think people are poor because they run out of money, or are they poor because they make poor decisions?
money is just like a way to keep score. Poor can be a mindset. Poor can be passing over opportunities repeatedly.
Bad.
Yeah, passing over opportunities repeatedly. That can keep you poor. You can be the working poor. Like I said, poor is a mindset. The amount of money you have is just like a state of